Great. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Jerry Burton. I'm the president of Nevada Now. I'm going to introduce the board members first, and then we'll get to our program and cover a little bit of business first. But I think we have everyone on. I don't see Michelle yet, Michelle Macy, but Tricia Methner is our executive vice president. Eva Love, who you've met, is our Vice President Outreach. Madalena Robertson is our Vice President Media and makes all of our graphics and helps me with the website. Vice President of Legislative Action and the Nevada Now PAC Treasurer is Sue Birch. Lenoring Briley is our Nevada Now Treasurer, and our Secretary is Michelle Maese. And I do believe we have, I think, one of the students, I'm not sure if Morgan's with us, Maya Strope and Morgan Renfro are from our Loud Girls Club. They're juniors attending West Career and Technical Academy in Las Vegas. And we're so proud of them and their club that they've started and the issues they're working on. So we're going to have an update from them next meeting on some of the things they've been doing with their club. So, and we'd also like to send our love and support to Deb Chomsky. We were so sorry to hear that Deb lost her husband. He passed away today. And if you've been an Indivisible Owl and you've been to any of their meetings, you know they always open up their home, and Ron's always so supportive. And we're just really sorry to hear that and send our love to Deb. And we want to thank everyone who helped us with the Las Vegas March for Reproductive Rights and Justice. It was a huge success. We had, I think, over 20 organizations involved. We estimate between 800 and 1,000 people there. And we have special thanks to the 4 women who started the march and started the planning. And Laura Campbell's here today. Laura Campbell, Gabrielle Hall, Sarah Robinson, and Dalen Singer. And we're so grateful to them for they were the MCs of the march, and they did a wonderful job. So. And our next program is our November program will be on the 17th at 4 p.m. We're going to be focusing on the needs of current and former incarcerated women. Leslie Turner with Mass Liberations helping us put together a program. Before that, we're going to have a private session, a listening session to get some ideas on what's going to be in that program. And we'll be announcing speakers and about that meeting soon, so that program soon. So we hope you'll hold that date. And just a little now business, we're looking for organizations and activists who will join us to educate and get voters for the state ERA on the ballot in 2022. You can contact me or email info@nevadanow.org to volunteer. And one of the reasons we're having our mass incarceration or the mass liberation meeting, not incarceration, with Leslie is we're working on solving period poverty in Nevada. And one of our steps is to find out what is needed in prisons. And we have been volunteering and donating to Red Equity with Samantha Glover. And at Project Maryland, Sue and I were just there on Thursday to help package period products. So it's a real focus of us this year and next and going forward. And then we have a lot of plans coming up for our Nevada Now PAC. And Sue, do you want to give an update on what we're doing there?
Yeah, I'm trying to get on my computer. I'm on my phone. So you're going to see me twice. Yeah, we've been working on the questionnaire, and I think to hand out to candidates. I think we're just about there doing some final polishing, although I think we'll wait to send it out to anybody until we've got a really good idea who's doing what and where and how. I'm sure you've seen everybody, announcing in fits and starts, kind of a scattering. It's kind of the theme of this meeting and everything going forward. Every office counts, every election counts. We're going to need everybody, boots on the ground, to not only drive turnout, but to help us support candidates. And as Jerry mentioned, we were so successful, surprisingly successful with our PAC in 2020. We'd like to do that again. You don't have to wait for a fundraiser to donate to our PAC. And I'm sure Madalena will put the link in there. Oh, there she did. And, you know, your help is needed. We're working on some fundraisers. If you have ideas for fundraisers, you know, throw them our way. You know, our efforts in 2020 were great, but 2022, I mean, if you think about it, it's, you know, the full state of Nevada is you know, up for grabs. And we can't let anyone take it away from us is basically what it comes down to. So I hope everybody is excited now and will continue to be excited. We can't wait. We got to get started, especially with the Equal Rights Amendment on the ballot. So any help will be appreciated. And you know, keep an eye out for a fundraiser. We've come up with a couple of ideas, and we're still putting the dots on the I's and the crosses on the T's, and we'll get that out soon. That's it.
Thank you. So now we'll get to our program. So like Sue was saying, today's program is going to highlight the importance of local offices, and we're joined by some amazing women in positions that don't always get the attention. It's so important for us to get activists involved, as activists to get involved and to help elected progressive feminist people into these offices. And not all superwomen wear capes. Sometimes they're like Trustee Linda Cavazos at a school board meeting, listening to comments until 2 a.m. about vaccine mandates, or Danna Lovell giving women the courage to run for office and training them to win. Or Councilwoman Olivia Diaz out in her community with the governor, bringing attention to the importance of vaccines. Or Briana Johnson overseeing daily operations of the Assessor's office in Clark County in the middle of a pandemic. Or Lisa Levine, when she was trustee, opposing changes to a board policy she felt made it harder for sexual assault victims to obtain justice. So we're going to hear from each of these women, and we're going to save time for questions at the end. And I also want to point out that as I was doing a little research on each of them, the first 4 women that we're going to talk to, our speakers, are all UNLV graduates. So we've got a lot of local people. Danna is also a 30-year Nevada resident, so we've got a lot of local people here, and that's pretty exciting. So we're going to start off with Lisa Levine. She is a former regent with the Nevada Board of Regents. She's a principal of Sagebrush Strategies. Before starting her own business, she served as director of government for IGT. And before that, she spent more than a decade working in Nevada politics and government. So thank you so much, Lisa, for taking the time to join us today.
Thanks, Jerry, for having me. Andrew and I got COVID at the end of September, and my cough is still kind of existing. So if I lose my voice, I just want to apologize that I sound so crappy. But thanks for having me. You know, everyone on this Zoom call, I think I know one way or another. It's nice to see you all, though. Some of you I haven't actually seen in like 2 years. But you all know what Nevada's system of higher education is. You all understand what the Board of Regents are. And I could probably spend hours talking about the history of the Board of Regents from an organizational structure, as well as, unfortunately, a lot of scandal and borderline potentially corruption and mismanagement if it wasn't actually corruption. So one of the things that I'm really focused on is just trying to bring more attention to the organization, because they are elected positions. There's 13 of them statewide. Just a little history on why there's 13, and I know this is a statewide chapter, so not to get into the North-South, but one of Senator Raggio's goals was protecting the North and securing more support for UNR, and in doing so, it was kind of like a packing the court situation. He expanded the Board of Regents so that the North would have more votes, which is very much how the structure is still today. Just an org chart way to understand the Board of Regents. You've got the 13 Board of Regents. They kind of serve, as Linda would say, like a school board, or even like a board of directors or board of trustees. And then they have the chancellor who works for them. And the chancellor serves kind of like a county manager or a superintendent for a school district. And there's been a long history of a weird relationship and tensions between the chancellor and the Board of Regents. And then, of course, you have the presidents of the colleges and universities, and then respective to their campuses and the structure there. You know, the regents are elected. They're elected to 6-year terms. That's pretty long. The only other position I could think of that has a 6-year term is a U.S. Senator, which that makes sense to me. I don't know about the board. And there's been a lot of debate in Nevada politics for decades over whether or not they should be elected, or if perhaps they should be appointed, maybe more like the State Board of Education, for example, because it's a hybrid. They oversee a $1.2 billion budget, which is a lot of money. And it's a lot of money in the sense that it should be going to invest in higher education, right? That money, if spent wisely, can have a very positive impact, not just on the faculty and the students who go to a college campus at some point in their lives, but frankly, all of us. Because what I like to say is Nevada's road to recovery runs through higher education, right? We see the labor market is shifting, whether it's because of technological advances like automation, or if it's due to the pandemic and all of the strange things that have happened over the last 18 months, like us all getting together on Zoom, for example, right? And so there's no question in my eyes, and I think that we could all agree on that higher ed in respect to workforce development and economic diversification, it matters. And if you look at the Board of Regents and you look at the meeting agendas and the policy conversations they have, it's not a jump to say maybe they don't get it. Because when I was on the board, which albeit it was a short period, it was less than a year. It was bittersweet when the governor appointed me. Everyone on here knows Sam Lieberman. He passed away very suddenly last April, and the governor appointed me to the board to fill his term. And I was baffled by the things that we were debating on the agendas when we were in the midst of a pandemic. We were in the midst of a 22% budget cut because of everything that was going on. And this is, you know, pre-CARES Act and pre-American Rescue Plan Act, right? So, you know, I think it's important that we get good people elected. And I also think it's important that we bring more attention because there's a lot of voter apathy. This is one of the bottom of the ballot. As it was mentioned earlier, 2022, you've got a ton of races that are going to be on the ballot. Sounds like we're going to have a ton of ballot measures too on the ballot. And they're going to be right there at the end. And these are races that if there's even more than one candidate for voters to choose, it's kind of a crapshoot. You know, maybe they'll raise 15, 25,000. Maybe they'll get some kind of voter message campaign out. But maybe they don't. A lot of the regents who are currently elected in an office haven't raised very much money. And I say that in the sense that when you raise money, you get your message out to voters so that they understand about the race, so that they're paying attention to the race, so that they know where to go online or who to call to ask questions. That really doesn't happen with the Board of Regents. Maybe all of you, if I were to kind of do a little school test and say, who's your regent, y'all would know because you're very engaged, obviously, you're here. But if you were to go knock on your neighbor's door, I have serious doubts that they would know, right? And it's important for all of the reasons we just listed out. And on the scandal part, a quick Google right now would show a current scandal that they're engaged in. And if you don't know, I'm just going to touch on it very briefly because there's a lot of legal stuff going on with it. But the chancellor, who is the first woman to be appointed from a national search to that position in the history of NG, filed a complaint against the Board of Leadership, who's the chair and vice chair, of a whole host of things, from abuse of power, undermining her authority, which she notes in the middle of a pandemic might be a problem for a lot of reasons, and oh, by the way, sex discrimination. And it's a 21-page single-space memo, and it's pretty incredible. What's really unfortunate about it, a million things, but in the last week of it coming out and being made public, so many people that I've spoken to said, Lisa, it was deja vu to me when I read it. And frankly, it was deja vu to me, and I was only on board for 6 months. So I say this because I really believe that if there is an example in Nevada politics right now of a good old boys club that is still intact that we need to rid, it's the Board of Regents. And so this group is a powerhouse. Thank you, Sue. I see you clapping. This group is a powerhouse. You are women who empower other women to get involved, to vote, to run for office. And so I just ask all of you to really keep the Board of Regents in mind when you're doing that. And that's my pitch. Thank you.
And it was perfect. Thank you so much. What a great way to start. It's so important. So, next I wanted to have, and we'll have some time for questions afterwards. So make sure you're putting questions in the chat. Eva will help us keep track of those, and we can have some questions at the end. So next I want to welcome Linda Cavazos. I consider her a friend and a fellow activist, president of the Clark County School Trustees. She was appointed by the Clark County School District, representing District G in 2017, and then was elected in 2018 for a full 4-year term. And we all love Linda and welcome you, Linda. Thank you for taking time in what I know has been a crazy time for you to join us.
Thank you so much, Jerry, and thank you to your board for having me here today. I try to join in your meetings when I can, but recently, and after like almost 19 years as a therapist, this is the only time that I've actually had to go in and work on the weekends because I haven't had time during the week to see counseling clients. And I'm sure, as you mentioned before, these are races sometimes that don't get much attention. I would just like to say that recently I would have liked to have gotten less attention at some of these meetings, but we are conducting business meetings, and we have to persevere. And I think Donna West would certainly help me out, several of you, as far as saying she persisted. And no matter how many times I had to take the board off the dais and go in the back, I am proud to say that some of the more challenging folks that have been showing up recently have not been able to shut down even one meeting. And I'm really proud of that, but it was a great challenge. So back to our topic today. I want to start out with something that I'll probably say right now at the beginning and again at the end, is a single vote. Your vote can be the deciding factor. On off season, when I say off presidential years, I believe it's either 1 in 5, 1 in 6, I'd have to check, voters actually vote for what we call the down ticket races. And as Lisa said right now, those are at the very bottom along with the initiatives, etc. And sometimes I have people say, we need to have people start at the bottom of the ballot. They already know who's at the top, and they may maybe work your way up. So a single vote can be really, really important. I lost track when I was doing a little research, I want to say a couple of years ago, on how many local races had been decided by just, like less than, at first I was looking for less than 20 votes, but I actually found less than 5 votes, so many races. So one of the reasons that I tell people that local policies and local officials are so important is because of the accessibility and the accountability. We're here. Now, I noticed that when the RJ and the Sun run all the elected officials, emails, and they run their phone numbers and stuff, the school board's not on there. We're the only ones that are not on there. And right now it's probably just as well because I've already been doxxed on social media several times. But when you think about your accessibility, you can just go to the meeting, whether it's at the Clark County Government Center or at the Greer Building, the Education Center on East Flamingo. You don't have to call Washington. You don't have to call Carson City. And we are very accessible. And when you look at that accessibility, to me, I see that as dovetailing with accountability. You can reach us. You can call the board office. We receive messages every day, and we don't have a staff like state or federal officials that, let's just say that we have a staff, but they work very, very hard at helping us with the multiple questions that are coming in. So having said that about the accessibility and accountability, I want to say that the reason that local elections are so important is that we have a direct and immediate impact on our communities. So going back to what you were given as background, my background, I was appointed in 2017. I believe there were 11 candidates to start out with. Trustee Erin Craner, District G trustee, was leaving. She decided she was not going to finish out that particular term. She was going to law school in Utah, so an opening came up. We had a lot of different, should we say, steps that we had to go through before I was selected to be the trustee. And just a little bit about District G. The southernmost boundary is Warm Springs, right about where Green Valley High School is my only Henderson school. And then it winds around all the way over to the east side where most of my constituents are located. I have Del Sol High School, Las Vegas High School. I have Chaparral High School, all in that area on the east side. And then it winds around, kind of does a little dog leg around, and then ends up by Ruby Thomas Elementary or middle school over by the old Boulevard Mall. And right now, something that really fits in with your topic, Jerry, just coincidentally, and I know Donna's smiling already because she knows what I'm going to say, is the redistricting process. We had a very, shall we say, interesting meeting. Well, all of our meetings are interesting, but this was a very interesting meeting last Thursday where we were having a discussion about the three maps that have been presented so far. And except for Trustee Ford, whose redistricting meeting is on Tuesday the 19th, 6 out of the 7 of us have had our meetings. Now, I'm going to go ahead and just say this. I was the guinea pig. As the president, somebody had to go first. So I said, okay, well, I'll have that. And, I'll go ahead and do that first. Our redistricting maps were not posted until I believe it was Monday afternoon, the 4th. And my meeting was on the 6th. So I'm going to say right now that, again, with accessibility, we need better communication. I had about 30 people turn out at my meeting. Most of them were there because I had done outreach with email blasts, Twitter, Facebook, whatever I could reach. I'm not going to count Bob and my daughter and son-in-law because, they were family support, but they were there. So about 30 people. It was very good. Battleborn Progress was kind enough to have somebody there and to stream it. And we showed the entire thing. Now, a lot of people asked a lot of really good questions. But the point I want to get to, and it kind of ties in with what Lisa was talking about as far as, do you know who your trustee is? Do you know who your regent is? The next meeting, I believe the next day, was District A, which kind of like abuts right up to District G. And that's mostly, Henderson, Green Valley, Seven Hills. I believe she's really funny, Trustee Guzman. She said, I had 5 people there, and 2 of them were people that I called and offered to transport. So we couldn't even do the activity. We did get 2 or 3 other people to come in. All the other meetings, I believe District C, Trustee Evelyn Garcia Morales had about, I think, 10, 12 people. All the other trustees have had basically 2 to 3 people. That's 2 to 3 people show up. And we have to do better than that on getting the word out. I made that quite clear last Thursday. And we are redistricting due to the numbers from the census. And so we are helping the community to really learn more about this process. But the redistricting, it fits right in with the 2022 elections with basically knowing who's going to represent you. So we have 7 districts, and that's A through G. And we have, I think, 1 trustee, District F, and I believe that would be Justin Jones' Commission District. Trustee Ford had such an abundance of growth, and Justin Jones, that she literally has to lose 60,000 constituents from her district. I think the next closest is Henderson, District A, has to lose, I think it's something like 17,000. All the rest of us are much smaller amounts in growth, and some of us actually, I believe I have to add about 8,500, 8,600, someplace in that ballpark. So when you're looking at the configuration of the 7 districts, we are tasked with 3 main tasks, and that's the school budget, which is multi-million-dollar, billion-dollar district. We're the 5th largest district. Besides the budget, the policies, and the only other thing that a lot of folks, I'm constantly explaining this, is we are not, as my kids would say, you're not the boss of me. we're not the boss. We're not the bosses, right? How many people remember that? You're not the boss of me. We are not the bosses of the principals, the region superintendents, the teachers, the support professionals. We have one employee. That's the superintendent. And we have informed oversight. He is actually the supervisor. So we did have an interesting discussion. Lisa kind of gave me a really nice segue into this. Thank you, Lisa. I won't call it a scandal, but it's kind of a conflict right now. And I actually reached out to Councilwoman Olivia Diaz, to Commissioner Chick Sagerbloom, and other local officials to find out how they were handling the redistricting. And we are the ones that have to make the decision on the maps, but the people that are drawing the maps right now are the superintendent's employees. So that started getting a little confusing, a little sticky, so to speak. So we did a lot of discussion about that. So when you look at that, we have to have a map that does not basically rezone anybody out of their district. We had, I think, 4 out of 7 trustees that moved, still stayed within their district. So now we have a lot of trustees that live close together on the boundary lines. Makes it really, really hard for the demographer. When we are looking at how important a local election is, we have folks that say, well, do you have anything to do with like the school lunches? Yes, we do, because that's under policy. I'm sure that all of you have been reading about the bus driver shortage. We're short about 240 bus drivers right now. We're also short about 800 teachers. I don't have the latest figures on the support professionals, but we're also, lacking there. So the superintendent and his staff bring the policies, the agenda items, all of that to the board, and that includes what we would call like a 288 meeting having to do with contract negotiations, or a 241 meeting having to do with personnel. Those are closed sessions. Those are not written by us. We have a negotiating team, and so a lot of folks get a little frustrated because it is complex. They'll say, well, Linda, why can't you do something about this? Or can you fix this? I said, well, I don't have authority over that, but I can bring it to the attention of the people who do. I can route it to the correct person. So when you think about our children's curriculum, their safety, their mental health, their social emotional balance with their academic priorities, we're looking at a lot of responsibility, but we only have the oversight. We can ask for additional information, and then we can table it, bring it back at another time. But the oversight and the operational issues, those are things that people get a little understandably frustrated about. As a former high school teacher of 15 years, right here in Clark County at Basic High School, 9 years at UNLV, and I was in both departments. I was in both the psychology and the curriculum. I know sometimes the superintendent will say, how do you know this stuff before I do? And I'll say, well, one, I'm old.
Whoops, she froze right on that. And then I think you froze. Well, I was going to wait a second here. Linda. All right. Well, we may have to get back to Linda. I think she was wrapping it up. That wasn't a good thing to end on. I don't think she's old. So let's move on, and we'll get back to, she's still frozen. So and I wanted to mention that Sandra had put some of the redistricting maps in the chat if you're interested in what Linda's talking about on that. So and I think she just dropped off. So next we're going to go to Councilwoman Olivia Diaz. Thank you so much for joining us. She won election to the Las Vegas City Council for Ward 3 seat in June of 2019, is the first Latina serving on the City Council, and she's a former member of the Nevada State Assembly representing District 11 from 2010 to 2018. And in the 2013 session was the majority assistant deputy whip. So lots of experience there. And we're so excited to have you, Olivia. Thanks for joining us, Councilwoman. Oops, and then you're on mute. Sorry. Can you unmute?
There we go.
There we go.
Got it. Thank you so much, Jerry. And first and foremost, I want to say that I am honored to be on this panel with such amazing women like Lisa Levine, like Linda Cavazos, like Briana Johnson, and Danna Lovell, and then all the other amazing, upstanding women that are also joining us on a Sunday on this Zoom. So it just shows how committed women are to making sure that we're doing our part to make community better. Just for those of you that may not know a ton about me, I'm born and raised here in Las Vegas of Mexican immigrant parents. I pretty much grew up on the east side, Eastern, and let's say Stewart and 28th Street were my stomping grounds as a young girl. And I then graduated from Rancho High School, UNLV grad, as was already mentioned, and I'm very proud to be a UNLV rebel. And then I was a Clark County School District teacher for 17 years, elementary. All of my years were in elementary education. And so I just wanted to emphasize that, I never thought when I was a young child or even a teen that I would ever jump into the political arena, but it really has been because of my passion to make a difference that I kind of have gone down this path. And the first time was in 2010 when I was a school teacher and we were seeing severe cuts in the budgets to schools and how that was impacting my students on a daily basis. And that's when I decided I needed to be in the legislature where the purse strings would be impacted. And then I got there and I realized, wow, this is bigger than one person trying to move, the boulder up the mountain kind of feat. We always are in Nevada thinking about how do we get more revenue, how do we get more money behind those that need it the most, right? So, and then one of the things that I'm incredibly, I think, remembered for in my first session as a legislator, one of the very first 4 Latinas as well to make it to the state assembly in 2010, was that I had my son 3 weeks into my first legislative session. So I went and relocated pregnant into Carson City, had my son up there, and was back in the halls of the legislature 2 weeks after I gave birth to my son. That's how committed and dedicated I am to, working for the community that I know needs a voice, because it doesn't, a lot of times we forget that not everyone is sophisticated. Not everybody knows who does what, for example. And I remember that when I was an assemblywoman, people thought I was a congresswoman, people thought I worked out of DC, and I had to do a lot of educating and saying, no, as an assemblywoman, I work in Carson City. That's our state capital. And now that I am a councilwoman, the same thing is happening too. Sometimes they're like, oh, congresswoman. I'm like, no, I'm not a congresswoman. I'm a councilwoman. And to speak to and kind of echo what the other speaker said, it's so sad to see the drop-off rates that people just kind of go president, vice president, senator, congressperson, potentially governor, lieutenant governor, and some state office holders, and then they drop off, and then they don't worry about who is representing them at a more local level, how they can be impacting the fate of the direction we go in our educational system, whether that be higher ed or K through 12. And as a city councilwoman, I love this work now. I've been in it 2 years, a little over 2 years, and I get to really be where the rubber meets the road. And one of the reasons why I decided to jump in and leave my state assembly seat is because I had been canvassing my community, especially the East area where I grew up, for 8 years, and very little had happened on the East side. Yes, we've done an amazing job as a city to invest in downtown. We've done an amazing job, to make sure the arts district is vibrant. But I think that we need to give its fair share of love everywhere in our city. And I wasn't seeing that transpire over on the east side where I grew up. There are still many sidewalks that are missing in a community that does basically walk to school a lot more than other communities. And so it just kind of feels like those inequities need to be addressed. And so just to give you a little flavoring of what a council person does, we make a lot of decisions on zoning, development, any kind of long-term projects that are coming down the pike, whether they are apartment complexes or affordable housing or new businesses that want to come here. We are basically tasked with the decision whether it's harmonious or compatible for our neighborhoods to come in. We also allocate 40% of Metro's budget. So LVMPD gets 40% of their budget covered by us. We also are in charge of Parks and Rec for our jurisdiction. So community centers, senior centers, parks are all under us. Sewer issues are all under the city. And of course, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that the city is the only local jurisdiction that has shelter space and a courtyard we're building out. We're making more sophisticated for our homeless community that I know we're seeing anywhere and everywhere continue to grow. And so I never knew that when I ran for city council, I'd be signing up for a pandemic as well. And being a local elected also means we get to step up and serve on boards like the Southern Nevada Health District I sit on the Southern Nevada Regional Housing Authority. I also sit on Workforce Connections. I feel like those three boards are so important. Making sure that people are housed, healthy, and hired is so important to anybody's economic prosperity and chances at a better life here. And I also get to sit on the Bond Oversight Committee for additional structures that get built from Clark County School District and the Southern Nevada Regional Planning Coalition. So I don't have a lot of downtime, as you can see, when I have Ward 3 things I'm trying to achieve and focus on, or the boards that I have to help steer. I'm now the chairwoman of the Housing Authority. I'm now the vice chair of the Workforce Connections Board. And so with, those leadership roles come more responsibilities, but we're ready for them. We know we have to make more strides in the affordable housing space, in the homeless, just continuum of care. We need to ensure that we have a funding stream and that we have all of the pieces in place to help our homeless community overcome being unhoused. And sometimes it's mental health, sometimes it's addiction, sometimes it's coming out to your parents and them not understanding what that is. And so there's just so much work, but I'm so happy that I get to roll up my sleeves and represent a community that traditionally doesn't speak up. We tend to kind of just listen and go along and not question and not, say we deserve more. But I feel like that's my role now that I'm here, and I'm excited, to be part of now moving forward and all the efforts we're going to undertake to make sure that in 2022, we continue to make positive, decisions for our community. And I feel that we have to have solid heads that are in it, not for themselves, but for the people.
Thank you. That was wonderful. And what I forgot to mention earlier is if there's a way for people to contact you, to maybe put it in the chat. So if there's a way that maybe your constituents can contact you, or people have questions beyond what we talk about today, if you could put that in the chat, that'd be great.
Will do.
Okay, thank you so much. And Linda, we cut you off at the end. You went away. I didn't know if you had any last minute before we get to Briana.
No, I'm so sorry. My internet went down. The wind has really been kicking up over here, and I was like frantically trying to hop back on, but I'm back. And no, I'm good. I'm good right now, Jerry, but thank you. I was sorry about that.
Oh, no, I'm glad you can stay on because I'm sure we'll have some questions, but thanks.
Sure, no problem.
So next we have Briana Johnson. She was elected county assessor on November 6, 2018. Prior to being elected, she proudly served the public for over 20 years in the assessor's office. So it's so wonderful to see you and meet you, Briana, and welcome and thank you for joining us.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me, Jerry. It is a pleasure. As Olivia said, such an honor and a privilege to be on this panel with such amazing women. So thank you again for inviting me. to be a part of this. And like some of the others, I, as Olivia mentioned, am a native, born and raised here, graduated from UNLV, and have been working in the assessor's office since September of '95. So it's been a long journey. Yeah, 26 years I've been in the assessor's office. And like some of the others, I didn't have any political aspirations, so to speak. My predecessor, Michelle Schaaf, decided that she was going to retire, and she thought enough of me, my knowledge and experience, and what I had done in the office for the years that I had been there, that she thought she would ask me to run. And after some great thinking, praying, talking to my family, I said, absolutely, I would, because I realized what an important role it is to be the assessor. And I said, absolutely, I would do it. And for that reason, luckily, I was elected. And some people ask, why is the assessor an elected position and not an appointed position? I don't know the reason for that. But in my mind, I guess I can only say is being the assessor, you're in a position for the people. Not so much that you are directed to do things perhaps by the county manager or perhaps by the commissioners, not that they would have you do anything that's not right. It's just your loyalty is to the people. And so in a position as the assessor, we don't make policy. We follow the laws that are governed or made by the legislature. We follow NRS 361 and the Nevada Administrative Code 361, and that's how we determine values. And all of our policies in the office are mostly statute driven. And so as the assessor, it is my job every legislative session to look at all the BDRs, all the bills that come out, to make sure that it doesn't doesn't impact the residents in Clark County negatively, so that any law doesn't impact them in a bad way. So every odd year, I'm paying attention to all of those things. I'm responsible for statutory reports that are due to the state to help the school district and those budget, because we are one of the top revenue generating departments in Clark County. And just to give you a little bit about what we do, the assessor is responsible for discovering, listing, and valuing all property in Clark County. And all of those values in turn turn into tax dollars. So just to give you an example, when I started in 1995, there were about 350,000 parcels in Clark County that we would value. And as of today, we have over 800,000 parcels that we value on an annual basis. And we value land, we value actual structures, we value personal property that is used to operate your business. So the gaming machines in the hotel casinos is considered personal property. The beds in the hotel casinos are considered personal property. We value all of those things for revenue. And once that revenue is billed, it goes to the school district. It goes to fire, police. It goes to 911. It goes to all of these different entities. So that's the job of the assessor. And to kind of put things, to give you an idea, the overall value in Clark County that we value is about $289 billion in taxable value. And it generates about $3 billion, well, it could potentially generate about $3 billion in revenue. And again, all of that revenue is broken out by school district, who usually gets the most of the revenue, fire, police, and just depending on your district where you live is how the money is dispersed throughout your district. And for those of you that weren't aware. And we also offer exemptions to veterans, disabled veterans, surviving spouse, and the blind. And what they can do is apply that exemption either to their DMV registration if they would like, or apply it to the taxes towards their home. And what they would do is call our office, get an application, or go online and get an application to see if they meet the requirements for those exemptions. we grant them the exemptions and they can use it how they choose. Again, towards the DMV for their vehicle registration, or use it towards their real property taxes or their manufactured home taxes. And in addition, we also value manufactured homes, and we bill and collect those taxes on manufactured homes as well. So the assessor's role, again, is so important, and it's one of those local offices that we kind of talked about that, yes, is at the bottom of the ticket, but not really realizing how important the role is and the experience, knowledge, and skill that is required to operate this organization. Again, we don't make policy, but it's about having someone in there that knows the job, understands the job, and can submit good reports because they have an understanding, because it's so important once we submit those reports to the state that they can use those numbers to set the budget for the schools and all of those different things. So that is the role of the assessor. And again, such an important role.
Thank you. I just saw that Linda put in the chat that we're learning so much from you, because I frankly didn't know what your job was, and you and I spoke a little bit, and now you've explained it. And I'm really struck, we're going to go to Danna next, but I'm really struck by the experience of the 4 people we've talked to, 4 women, and being, locals and people who've grown up in Nevada and lived here a long time. It's just so important to have people like you in the office, in these offices. I'm really just so impressed and so happy that you joined us. We're learning a lot. So I also asked Danna to join us because Danna Lovell is a friend to Nevada Now. She's the executive director of Emerge Nevada. She inspires women to run for public office and trains them to win. And Nevada's built the first women majority state legislature in the country, as most of us know, in 2018. And many of them were Emerge graduates. And in 2020, Emerge helped build on that. And so we've invited Danna because people might be wondering how they could run for office after hearing all these wonderful women speak today. And we wanted to include that. And I know Danna's always looking for women who want to run. So thank you, Danna.
Yes, Jerry, thank you so much for having me. I know you all can tell that my voice is like what Lisa said. I've had a cough as well, so I apologize for the funny voice, but thank you for having us. And I know we were here in the summertime when we opened applications for our signature training program. And I'm happy to say that we had a large amount of applicants this year. Our closing date was on Friday, but we are still looking for some seats to be filled. So if you know someone to send, we would still take their application. Just let me know. Also, just wanted to quickly mention, we had so much fun with all of you at the march that you put together. Thank you for having Emerge with you. It was so much fun, and it was so nice to be together again. I enjoyed it very much. I think it's really clear after hearing from all the women here, the type of women that step up for public office. It's so wonderful to hear each of their stories, but think of the work it takes for them to do what they do. And I just hearing Briana speak, I remember when we talked about when she was running initially, and the local offices, if you're like, let's say for the regents or whatever, are one thing, and those are huge districts, but Briana had the whole county, the entire county. And I remember she'd be like, well, I would stay, but I have to run out to Mesquite, or I would stay, but I have to run over to Boulder City. And I'm like, it's 5 o'clock. What do they have a 7 o'clock meeting, and I need to, think of the district that she, that some of these positions, what it takes to get out to each part of it. And so we know how to support people to run for office. We know how to be with their campaigns. But as was mentioned before, these seats are so far down the ballot, and they are not going to get the funding, even though their districts are just as large as a commissioner would get, or as even a city council person would have. And so we have to make do with other ways. And one of the best ways to do it is to help with volunteers. Briana and Linda, they need to be, Lisa, wherever, what these other positions like this, we need to have other volunteers showing up for them all on the same night. They're already going out to 2 or 3 or 4 events in a day or an evening. And where else can we have them show up would only have to be by surrogates and other helpers. And so it's very important for us to create a web, a network for them. And one way we've found to do that is to share calendars. So a lot of times, how do you know what else is going on, And in these positions, even Olivia and others, you need to cross over the lines. It can't be just a Democratic event. It has to be all events. It has to be realtors. It has to be dog owners. It has to be, you have to appeal to every imaginable type of voter. And so how can we get them to the other events? How can we promote them to come there? And a lot of times we might just need to take their paperwork ourselves. We have to take their flyers. We have to help them figure out how to door hang along with who's ever in their district, And so we have to find friends and other candidates that can do that for them. And I guess that's my biggest takeaway, really, is that these districts are so huge. There's so much for them to do. On this last ballot on 2020, we had all of the district court judges. They had the same thing as Briana had. They had to make it everywhere, all the time, to all people, and also run as a nonpartisan. And so it makes it really difficult and really hard. And a lot of times, as Linda can attest, someone will win a seat that shocks you. It's shocking that someone can win a seat, but they do it because they're able to break through somehow of the noise of all the election, clear down the ballot to where they are. So I think another really important part of it is possibly, we've looked into this a lot, is sharing digital ads, even social media, sharing some of that responsibility. If we have someone who can do the research, then we can help all of the candidates with the information that it takes to get those ads out there, and to be working smarter, not harder, while you're sleeping. Your digital ads can be working for you. And believe it or not, that's what has to happen. I mean, it can't just be the 24, or the 12 waking hours. It has to be a 24-hour effort, I think. So another thing that can happen, and we've done this a little bit, is having the giving circles. So because there's not a lot of money out there, you can bring together giving circles in the areas where, like if it is District G, District F, wherever that is, we can have small grassroots events where we help someone, even with small dollars, that could get another flyer made or could pay for some more ads. You do have to think about all of the extra things you could do, because a lot of times those big dollars are not coming into these races. And so you have to work smarter. You have to do a little bit of different things, and that doesn't mean it can't be done. We have a lot of great women that have won their races, and they've done it on a shoestring, and that's what women do.
That's what women do. Thank you, Danna. And you've given us some great ideas. I think especially in a pandemic, we're having to get creative on how we get to know each other, how we campaign. I know last, we went out and did a lot of door hanging and knocking on doors, so I think some of those ideas you have, we ought to all get together and come up with ways to achieve that, especially right now. We need to. So I also wanted to recognize that we have several other electeds on the Zoom. Claire Thomas is here. Michelle Gorlow. I see Michelle. I saw Senator Spearman on. Who else am I missing? Elaine Marzola is here. Thank you, Elaine. And Venetia Constantine, and she's a former now, were you our president, Venetia, in the day? Yes. So she's been with Nevada now. So thank you for joining us. And am I missing anyone that that's on with us. One of the things I was going to mention, Danna, that you said, we got to know a lot of the judicial candidates coming to, not to plug ourselves, but Nevada Now meetings. We get to know, Briana can come and meet members, and we met, a lot of the judicial candidates that way, because we couldn't really endorse that deep because our PAC was new, but we could get people to, get to know the people who are running for office. So when we go to, I go to the women's demo meetings and I meet people there, and just so if we can attend each other's programs and get to know people. So Eva, have you been watching the chat? Do we have any questions there? You're on mute, so maybe we can get a few questions.
I'm muted. I just had to unmute.
I know, I was going to say, you're on mute.
So I have a question for Dana. So is there a way that we could do take each candidate one at a time and say, send us the media, all the media information, and then have all the members post on their social media those things so that we get it out more. So, if we had, 50 women all sending it out to their groups, would that work? Would that help?
Maybe scheduling a Twitter blast or something for once, for each candidate, what do you think, Danna?
We think that's great. This year, for the first time, I know that we're talking to Linda because we want to make sure she gets in and gets started on this too, because we haven't had her. She's been so busy, we can't get her. But we have a CAT team, which is called Campaign Advisory Team. And that's exactly what we're doing. We're helping with this first part of, before we get into the actual season of it per se, we can send out postcards to the districts, find out, even do listening times with their voters. And we have volunteers that will be doing that for them, and then a campaign advisory team that will help make sure that we do get all of that out. So it would be great if we had, if Now wanted to be part of that, we could send it over and then the blast can continue on. That's by far the best way. And remember, when someone's posting, when you post, the best way to get it seen is to make sure there's some dialogue underneath it. So you have to, if Lisa Levine posts and then I post on her dialogue and Donna says something to me about what I said, that's the best way to get it seen, because then it gets elevated and it gets to more people that way. So just posting is awesome, and posting and commenting is even better.
Great idea.
Then Senator Spearman
I see Senator Spearman's hand up.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. I just had a question. This one's for Lisa. In 2020, last election cycle, there was a ballot question about the Board of Regents and taking them out of the Constitution. I don't know how many people know that right now, when it comes to the budgetary process, the legislature has very, very, very limited oversight over the budget. And that's certainly something that I think all citizens of Nevada should be interested in. And I think it's going to be on the 24 ballot. But if Lisa can just speak a little bit more about that, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, Senator, thanks for bringing it up. It's a bullet on my notes, but I tried not to look at it when I was speaking and I missed it. Ballot question 1 was on the ballot 2020, and what it would have done was remove the Board of Regents from the state constitution. Nevada is the only state in the United States that has this antiquated system where NSHE is actually included in the state constitution. And because of that, and many of you know this, whether you're a legislator on the call, an activist, or from the lobbying corps, NSHE refers to themselves as the fourth branch of government. And there's an arrogance to that, but part of it from an organizational structure is just like Pat said, there is a lack of accountability that they're held to because of that structure that's in place. And because of that, there has been a lack of transparency. And I can tell you, when I was on the Board of Regents, there were certain things that were going on that I had questions about. And even though I was a regent at the time, I didn't even have privilege to access some of the things that I wanted to know about. Just to give you a little example, anything that comes to the Board of Regents financially that has to be approved by the full board, the threshold is $1 million. If it's some type of contractual agreement that is less than $1 million, which, oh, by the way, over the course of the contract, it could easily go over $1 million, but it's just for the initial hiring of that RFP or whatever the relationship type is. If it's under $1 million, it doesn't go to a full board, which means that the chair and vice chair have an enormous amount of power. And unfortunately, if the Attorney General does a full investigation, like I hope he does with the Chancellor's allegations, I have a strong feeling that some of this might come up, and abuse of powers could definitely be discoverable by some of these good old boys. But that was SJR 5. Senator Joyce Woodhouse, Assemblyman Elliot Anderson, they really championed it. When it got approved by the legislature, bipartisan, and I'm pretty sure almost unanimous. There were a few outliers, but it was one of those few examples of Republicans, Democrats, North, South, everyone saying, yeah, Board of Regents kind of suck and we need to rein in some of their powers and have some oversight. Everyone seemed to be in agreement on that. It was on the ballot in 2020, and despite a really strong coalition, it was worded really confusing. It was. I mean, even my mother called me and said, I don't understand. You're on the Board of Regents, right? How am I supposed to vote? In full disclosure, I voted for it. And my significant other was a big part of the political effort to get it passed. It didn't pass. It fell short by less than 1%. It overwhelmingly passed in Southern Nevada, like 2-1 overwhelmingly. But in the North, there were some political differences. I think a big piece of it, like I said, it was confusing how it was written from the Secretary of State's perspective. And the second piece of that is there was a pandemic. And it's just, as a lot of you know, it's hard to campaign during a pandemic, right? You don't really get a feel for how people are thinking about something. You can't get on a Southwest flight and fly to Reno and sit down and do a coffee with someone to see, hey, how are your community members thinking about this? That was totally missing last cycle. Luckily, Joe Biden still pulled it through and so on and so forth. So even though it didn't pass, the legislature this past session did something that I think was fantastic, and they passed SJR 7. And what SJR 7 will do is give voters another opportunity to really consider removing the Board of Regents from the Constitution. It'll be on the ballot November 2024. And on a positive front, it gives the Secretary of State, whoever that will be at the time, and also the coalition who's working on it, to reconsider the language of how it's written so that it's less confusing, because it was written very, it was like the jargon was just way too legal. Venetia, maybe you would have understood because you're a lawyer. But Senator, I'm glad you brought it up. It's something that I'll be supportive of. I hope all of you are supportive of. If you have, slates, if you're doing questionnaires, I think it's something that should be included. We should all be supportive of accountability and transparency in our education system, especially of a government agency that's statewide that has a $1.2 billion budget. Thanks.
Yeah, if I can do real quick follow-up, Lisa, so everybody, I think one of the reasons that this is very important is because there are a lot of issues regarding gender equity that right now we have no oversight over. And there are also issues with regard to safety on campus that we have no oversight. And this should be front and center for us because we're right there at the brink of not being able to get safety, not being able to find out information, not being able to make sure that there's equity, some type of diversity audit. We don't have any insight into that at all. And the other thing that I want to say, and I'll look for it while we're still on, but in 2013, I did have a bill that required all of the ballot initiatives to be written in the 4th grade language. And so that's something that I know we've really not taken a look at a lot, but we really should. I'll find that legislation and bring it back because if it's written in the 19th grade, most people aren't going to understand it.
Can I just follow up on that? And I don't want to monopolize this because there are other offices that are really important, but I could definitely talk about the Board of Regents all day, which is embarrassing. But Senator Spearman is right. And one of the things that she's referring to in terms of safety on campus, and this came up during our Title IX debate, which was very heated and unfortunately dominated by mansplaining in terms of the actual definition.
Literally, right?
Literally. Yeah, literally, right? But right, you know, we know that sexual harassment, sex discrimination, and sexual assault is a huge issue on college campuses. That's across the country. That's not specific to Nevada. And I don't mean that our universities and colleges aren't trying to do a good job. Of course they are. They absolutely are. But some states, what they do, especially if they have a statewide infrastructure like we do in Nevada, because not all states have an entry system, they give, you know, more respect to the individual institutions and colleges for their communities, right? But we have a statewide system, and one of the things that we could do is have a campus culture climate, which could shed light on all of the accusations that come forward, all of the situations of rape or some kind of violence, even auto theft, whatever that might be. And we know that reporting is very it's you know, a problem. Victims have barriers still to this day to come forward, and it's a huge issue. Under Trump, they rolled back Title IX changes that under the Obama era they put in place to bring increased protections for victims of all of the things that we're talking about. And one of the things that the legislature tried to do this last session, and Pat or Venetia or some of the folks on, you might know better, but they tried to have a bill so that there could be a statewide campus climate survey to try to capture this in data. Because as we all know from a policy perspective, if we don't have data to show there's a problem, you're never going to get someone to focus on a solution. So that is a piece of it. And just the second part that I think is really important, part of the reason that you have a ballot measure to remove the Board of Regents from the state constitution is because in 2015, they actually lied to the state legislature. And by lie, I mean it in the true definition. You can Google this. This is very public at the time. But Dan Kleitch was the chancellor. The Board of Regents was a bunch of good old boys actually on the board at the time. Some of them aren't there, but they still have a lot of power, unfortunately. And they lied to the state legislature about the funding formula. And unfortunately, it did get passed. And what it did, and I know Sandra's on here from College of Southern Nevada, and she can probably speak to funding formula more than me. It might be a little late on a Sunday to get too into it, but it makes it hard for colleges that are community colleges in Nevada to get equity in the funding per student, whether it's a workforce development program or it's a requisite class. There's not equity. And it's a huge issue, especially knowing that community colleges are on the front lines of all of the underserved students, the labor shortage, everything that's going on. And so, you know, if we can't trust an agency to give information that is good for policymakers in the legislature to then do the right thing, then there's a huge accountability issue. So that's part of it.
Thank you.
Now I will stop talking about the
No, it's important and fascinating actually to hear that. Eva, do you see any other questions that we need to get to? I might have a couple myself, but I don't want to leave.
I don't see any other things, but I did want to mention that on the Daily Show, John Legend was interviewed, I think it was Thursday night, and he's spearheading an initiative to get people to focus on local elections. And I was like, yes, we're doing that. So if anybody hasn't seen that, maybe they can look it up. And I thought it was really well done.
Yeah, I'll try to find it and post it so we have it accessible to see as well, because you were telling me about it. And I was glad that Senator Spearman came on. She's been the voice in my ear saying every office, every election matters. And so I'm always listening. She's my mentor. So if Senator Spearman, I started looking at having this program thinking we've got to start working on this. So before we can do a couple more questions, but Linda, I have a question, and I think you kind of touched on this the last time I saw you on another program, but the program that I went to, or the meeting I went to, school board, first of all, it was life-changing because I had seen on the news what's been happening in school board and city council and, you know, county commission meetings, but I hadn't seen it for myself. And that's why I started off with, super women don't all wear capes, because you sat calmly, patiently listening to these people make their comments, and you let them all until 2 a.m. make their comments. And afterwards there was the vote, and wonderful people voted to have the vaccinations for teachers. And I wondered how, I know you kind of touched on it in the last meeting, but how is that going, the actual implementation of that?
Jerry, thank you for that question, because I've had a lot of people contacting me about that. And it's everyone. It's parents, educators, obviously, and the community. We have not been brought a draft plan yet for that. They are working on the issue of exemptions, because people are asking about exemptions. So until we have that piece, put together in a definitive parameter, we won't be able to implement anything. The good news is that our vaccination rate with educators has gone up, and we're very happy about that. But so far, we do not have a draft yet of the actual implementation plan. And part of the reason for that is because that does have to be worked out in collective bargaining with the contracts and with the unions.
I knew it wasn't going to be easy. I was happy to see the vote, but I knew it was going to take some time to implement. And,
right.
And I'm sure most people have seen what's happening, but the thing we talked about when I was in the women's demo meeting with you is that this is the plan around the country for people to infiltrate your meetings, be it city council, commission meetings, whatever.
Yes.
And get people to quit. And I think a lot of people saw the viral video of the woman in Florida who's had a very similar situation to what you've been going through. And I'm just so, I don't know what to describe you as. It's such, I work with you with Moms Demand Action, and I've seen you at the school board meetings, and the strength that takes, and the grace that you show. And I know Olivia is out in the community, with the governor getting her vaccine in public, so people will see that it was your flu vaccine, I believe, Olivia, and saying that, vaccines are important. And I wondered, Olivia, how's that going for you, being out in the community in a pandemic, trying to help your community?
I just don't pay much attention to the trolls. Obviously, there's a lot of folks that kind of hang out in the anonymity, being anonymous behind a screen, whether it's, a social media platform. And obviously, right after the governor getting my vaccine, I had all these notifications pinging in my phone, whether it be Twitter or others. And there was a lot of hate chatter, but I choose not to focus on that. I don't even pay much heed to that, and I just keep my focus on the mission, which is making sure that our community is happy and healthy. And I know the vaccination and the vaccine has divided us so much so, and I was like, where is this coming from when all of us had to be vaccinated fully to attend a school, whether it was against, measles, mumps, rubella, chicken pox, polio. We've been getting vaccinations forever, and that we about but now with these new ones, it's just everybody's kind of, made up their mind that they're horrible, that we're trying to chip people, or they're believing nonsense instead of the science. But I try to, just kind of like my son when he was, a baby, and I take him to the pediatrician's office. If it was that time for the flu shot and the pediatrician was saying your son needs the flu shot, I would always set the example to my son by getting it first before he got his. So that's what I'm trying to do. Just set the example and say, hey, I am getting my COVID vaccine. I am getting my flu shot. It is important because these things can really take a toll on our health.
Thank you, and thank you for doing it so publicly. I too took my grandsons with me when I got my booster the other day, and I'm a big baby when it comes to shots, and it actually did not hurt, and so I didn't have to even fake it, But they watched my husband and I get our booster, and we've got our now I'm like Donna, we're like pincushions. I got my flu shot. I'm, give me whatever I can to stay healthy. I've been working on this for, a year and a half. We've tried to not get sick. So I know all of us are like-minded, but I appreciated seeing you with the governor and being so visual with it. So thank you. And I didn't know, Eva, do you see any other questions or anybody else have anything they want to talk about before we go?
I think, okay.
I see Leanne was saying about her pediatrics appreciate
Yes.
it. So thank you, Leanne.
And Danna was saying, how are we supposed to attract others to run for those seats, considering what Linda's going through weekly? It's really.
But I think that's the point. Is
they're
is
trying
to scare you off. I see Lenore has her hand up. Lenore,
hand up. I want to say that it's a great panel, very informative because I didn't know what half these things were. I have a question for Briana. Does the money from the marijuana tax go to you, or is that what you're collecting?
No, we don't collect for the marijuana tax. Everything that we do is property taxes.
Property?
Yes.
and Brianna, I have one more question for you. I didn't ask you this one, and I was thinking it when you were talking. How did COVID affect you? Were you working from home part of that time? Were you in the office? How did that affect you?
No, we were working from home. Well, most of the county employees, the initial shutdown that happened in March, they were out of the office from March until about late May. Everyone was working from home, except for me. I was still going into the office, me and some of the managers. And of course, it was tough because you're still trying to serve the public with the short staff. And that's the thing about the assessor's office. When we are short staffed, it's not like if Home Depot closes, you can go to Lowe's. We're the only office that provides the service that we provide. So it's really tough that when the pandemic was happening, we still had to provide that service because there were people who still needed their veterans exemptions. There were still people who wanted to make sure that their property record was okay. So all of those services we still had to provide. But the good news about that is some of those phone calls I could answer because I've been in the office. So even though we were short staffed and had a lot of people at home, that was the time that I could get in the trenches and be part of the solution to help those that still required our government services.
Thank you. I know you were very accessible when I tried to find you, and then you answered the phone. It was wonderful. You're very accessible.
Yes.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Jerry,
go ahead.
I'm in about, keeping folks motivated for running for office, even though you see what's turning out currently and giving Linda a lot of gray hair and a lot of a lot of gray hair. I just think that we need to remember that they're very vocal minority. I really don't think that the majority of Las Vegans or Nevadans or even Americans think this way, but they do turn out in droves. And I've been telling my husband as we've watched this unfold that all of us are equally responsible for not turning out also to counter the narrative, right? And so we the responsible ones, making sure we're not spreading COVID, that we're taking care of each other. And then the narrative is flipped all of a sudden to kind of say, oh, the majority are thinking the way these people are just screaming or yelling at. And I feel like, is it difficult? Yes. Is it something we all enjoy? No. But I think we need to have sane heads, and I think we need to have logical, intelligent people in very important positions making the right decisions when a pandemic or something, a crisis hits, or even to run daily operations. You want people who are really looking at data and making data-informed decisions versus, gut decisions or conspiracy-led decisions. And so I just say, don't lose hope. But, the cooler, saner, more logical head should always prevail. And so I hope that you guys will feel inspired to step up and make your difference any way you feel you can.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And that reminded me of, I gathered myself up and went to Linda's meeting because I wanted her to see my face and know I was there. And I'll tell you, it was very, like I say, it was very life-changing to see people the way they were commenting and acting, as anyone has seen that's watched the television. But the other part that was really difficult, Linda, was they were not, and you know this as well as anyone, they were not enforcing the mask mandate when I was there. And I was sitting with Liz Becker, and then we had some other people with us as well behind us. And I mean, they literally had the people sitting in front of us with never did put a mask on, and they were not enforcing it. And I know that's a problem that you've had
Yes.
with them not following your requests. And as maybe a final question, how is that going? How is the enforcement of some of those things going? Because I haven't been back, but and just I'll let you answer the question. But the other thing I want people to keep in mind is I really felt like these were people. I know there are some that are not locals, but they're motivated to vote, and we can't. That's why I think next year we can't take anything for granted.
Right.
There is an angry piece there that maybe they never voted before, but I feel strongly that they will vote this time, and we've got to get numbers out to vote. So,
Right.
Linda, sorry for the rant, but it was a lot.
No, that's okay. And I will say that issue was definitively addressed. I had messages from former students at Basic High School and former students at UNLV, and I'll just use their vernacular. They texted me, they called me, and they said, "Oh my God, Miss C, if we had been in your class, if that had been us, you would have kicked our asses out so fast, our heads would have been spinning." So the entities that were not doing the enforcement, that were supposed to be doing the enforcement, I was forced to look at other avenues. I had to hire private security, and our last few meetings have been calmer, but those folks that were not enforcing the mask, that was, I can't go into confidential details, of course, but it was addressed. And I have no problem with saying that I was not happy about that. We had staff at some of our other meetings that were at the front door that were handing out the mask. They were handing out an actual hard copy of the rules. And those staff were abused by some of those folks coming in. And I can't have that. So it has been addressed. The last few meetings have gone quite well. I've only had to trespass, I think, 2 or 3 more people. And at our last meeting, only had to have one person escorted out. The other one left voluntarily. They would not wear their mask. So it's been going better, Jerry, and thank you for the question.
Thank you, because it was frightening. But and why I didn't stay till 2 in the morning, because I didn't feel that my health was safe with people sitting in front of me with no mask, and we've all been so careful. So I just want to wrap it up, if as I often do, if Senator Spearman has a moment to, she just put in the chat to remember to focus on the long game.
Yes.
So Pat, can you give us a little, as you often do, send us off with some words of wisdom on how to motivate people?
Yeah, thanks a lot. And I don't know about words of wisdom, but I'll give it a shot. Okay.
Oh yes, you do.
So here, we are fighting for reproductive rights because we forgot the long game 20 years ago. We are fighting right now to make sure that people get vaccinated, teachers and students and everyone get vaccinated, because we've talked very little about the school board. When we start thinking about what's coming down with the ARPA funds, that's county commission. When you start talking about criminal justice and police reform, that's the municipalities. And so we've got to make sure that in every election, and I said this the other night, it's kind of like when you're looking for a house, very rarely do you find everything that's on your list, but you have to weigh what's really important to you. And I'm really hoping that we will not play this, the perfect and let that rule out the good. We're not voting for Christ. We're not voting for God. We're voting, and there's going to be a human being in that seat. And that human being is going to be fallible like all of us. But if we look at what's down the road, because many people right now who are serving in the state legislature, who are serving even on school boards, and Councilwoman Diaz is a reflection, they've served on school boards before. And so never forget that whatever we're voting for in 2022 it's a setup for what we need to be doing in 2032. And if we lose these elections because there's some type of purity test, woe be unto us. Woe be unto us. I believe we're only maybe 2 election cycles away from Black and brown people going back to pick cotton. That's how serious it is. And I've talked to all of my friends in Virginia and said, you don't want to become Texas, get your you know what out there and vote. We've got to do it. All of us are vulnerable to become like Texas, to become like Mississippi, to become like Alabama, to become like these places where, oh my goodness, has intelligence taken leave of absence or gone on a permanent vacation? So make sure we're paying attention to the long game. The long game. We're not going to get everything all the time with the candidates that run, but we're going to get what we can get this time. And I'll tell you, someone who served 5 sessions in the legislature, there have been some bills that I've not been able to get passed until I've carried them for 4 sessions in a row. Pay equity was 3 sessions until I got it passed in 2019. The voting rights, putting the voting rights, the bill or statute into our Constitution, that I carried that 15, 17, 19, and you all voted on it in 20. And so we're not going to get everything. Tell your friends, we're not going to get everything. There's some people who I've heard say, we're going to boycott 2022 because we didn't get the George Floyd Policing Act. If you do something like that and you give the guy from Kentucky the leadership, the majority, woe be unto us. And let me say this and then I'll be finished. I want us to consider the things that we are requiring of Chuck Schumer and other members of the current leadership, Democratic leadership in the Senate. We have a 50-50 split right now. And with the vice president, she gives us 51. If we do some of the things that people are suggesting that we do to isolate Manchin and isolate, what's her name? From Arizona. Cinema. Yeah, Cinema. Yeah, we do those sorts of things. Listen, it's 10 steps. We're 10 steps away from flipping the Senate in the middle of Joe Biden's term, because all they have to do is take those 10 steps, go over to McConnell and say, I want to become a Republican. And now all of a sudden, before 2022, we're 48-52. So I just want people to be careful about what you're suggesting, because it would be different if we had 52. Okay, they wouldn't matter. But if those 2 people leave because of the things we're saying they should do and how we're trolling them, then we're screwed. So just my thoughts.
Well, speaking of good people running for local office, Senator Spearman, you've got my support for mayor of North Las Vegas. I know it's a crowded field, but I don't think the competition is very strong against you. You stand out amongst all of them. One of them I served on the Board of Regents with, and I don't have very strong words for her. I really hope that you win, Senator Spearman.
Thank you.
Amen.
Well, thank you for the send-off, Pat. It was a great program. I appreciate everybody taking time on a Sunday afternoon when it's probably time to spend with family when you're not having to work. But, well, Linda, you had to work today. But we appreciate you. And this has been recorded, so we'll have it on our website. We'll send it out in an email with the contact information for everybody. And if there's anything else you want to send to me that you want to, have on that email, we can do that. So I appreciate